to another episode of the Read Pile. Today I'm going to be talking about the Wretch, and this is something that I have been wanting to do for a few months, honestly. I really enjoyed these. It's thankfully not a question of whether or not I wanted to keep these. It was just timing wise, when can I reread these so that I can praise them? And that time is now. I was talking with the Shock and Awe guys a few weeks ago, and we did a Final Fantasy VII video, and in that, Berg mentioned that he renamed Cloud to the Wretch, which is just a great story. So every time, you know, there's a cutscene in that, and there's dialogue, and other characters are referring to Cloud as the Wretch. It's perfect. But once he told me that story, this was mid-December, I think, I knew that I had to reread The Wretch. The time was now. And I've done it. It's still amazing. I was trying to figure out which stories I was going to talk about. I have volumes 1 through 3 here. This is all of it. Hopefully not forever, but we'll talk about that. So this was put out, these 3 collections were put out in 2003. I think the stories were done in the 90s and early 2000s, and then collected here, mostly through anthology books like Negative Burn. But you can, if you read this here, which I do recommend, he talks about each of the stories that get collected, and there's a little, he calls them liner notes, but it's little behind-the-scenes snippets about each of the stories, where they were originally published in some cases. Again, I recommend reading it, but I recommend reading all of this. Because the other thing I was thinking about while reading these was, which stories am I going to highlight? And it turns out that if I were to try to do it, I would just wind up talking about all of them, because they're all great. But I should talk about who and what he is, and sort of the best explanation I could think of is he's sort of a street-level Doctor Strange. He deals with, the stories take place in a place called Glass City, and I think it's more the suburbs, because everyone seems to have lawns. It seems less like a city. There aren't skyscrapers, but everyone has a house. There's lawns, there's trees. So it's not really a city I'm familiar with. But anyway, Glass City. And he is considered a local legend. Many don't believe he exists. The Wretch never speaks. There are a couple of stories where people describe encounters with the Wretch, and it's just, I mean, it's just spectacular. But I've been flipping through this for a while, so all of these, I'll say 90% of these are written and drawn by him. I think there's one story that isn't written by him, and possibly one story that's not drawn by him, but everything else written and drawn by Phil Hester. The Wretch, his appearance has changed over time. He generally, I think newer versions have his arms wrapped, maybe with or without a shoulder pad, and that sort of wrapped scarf as well. But earlier on, he sort of had buckles. So there's a couple of buckles. He's got a knee pad there. A couple of extra straps off his shoulder. But his style did change over time. Oh, this story is amazing. Let me just show you this. I think this explains things pretty well. This cosmic being shows up. He's got Kirby dots all over the place. But this cosmic being shows up, and then the Wretch shows up. He starts wrecking some stuff. So the Wretch shows up here. He steals a kid's skateboard. On that skateboard is this lightning bolt sticker, which he peels off, sticks to his chest, and then the Wretch has superpowers. It's so amazing. It's so amazing. He beats one cosmic being by playing marbles. It's it's just so good. It's so good. There's multiple stories about babies. There are sad stories that have happy endings. I can't even pick a best of the three. They're all just really good. I think Volume 3 has the first and supposedly, hopefully not, last Wretch story. There's a... Oh yeah, sometimes there's pipes too. And there you can see his arms are a bit more metallic. He's got kind of a Edward Scissorhands vibe at a couple of points. But it's just... I can't pick a best of the 3 volumes. Volume 3 is shorter than the other 2, but they're all fantastic. If you get your hands on any of these, they're all great. And then once you have one, you'll probably pick up the other 2. So there he is. I want to try and make a custom of him now. I should mention, so I got all of these signed. He was at a convention. He's from Iowa. I'm in the suburbs of Chicago. He showed up at a convention, I want to say the mid-2000s, late 2000s, and everyone there was in line for Green Arrow, and I show up and hand him a stack of the Wretch, and he's like, oh man. So I think I made his day that moment. But the Wretch, somewhere around that same time, I discovered the Coffin, but I don't think I associated the 2 together, because this, he writes, this is, I first noticed him because of his art. So I first noticed Phil Hester on Green Arrow, took notice, and I liked, honestly, the art better than the story. But I then found the Wretch, I think years later, and somewhere in there, I can't figure out the exact timeline, but I also discovered the Coffin. I got this one signed as well, and I've just been a fan ever since, and now he's doing, somewhere I have a pile of comics here to review, but he's also doing, where are the books? He's currently doing Batman Gotham Year 1. And the art on that is just spectacular, top-notch stuff. So if you like Phil Hester, if you like his art, I highly, highly recommend grabbing the Wretch, because I could gush about each one of these stories. But like I said, he's sort of a street-level Doctor Strange. He's dealing with weirdness, and but not on an astral plane. He's well, there's under a bridge. But, you know, he's street level. Oh, this one's great. There's that, there's a sun. There's a sun on a child's ceiling, and it talks to her, and that story's great. And then there's, satanic breakfast cereal, like, just all of it's great. And if I start, I'm going to talk about all of them, but highly, highly recommend this. If you're knowledgeable, at least, of Phil Hester, because he's been working for decades, then absolutely recommend picking up what he wrote and drew himself, in most cases. The Wretch, just phenomenal work.